And I think to kicking off, Armand, maybe just for our audience, a bit of background on Endeavour, who you are, and the responsibilities of the organization.
Yeah, and Endeavour Energy is an electricity distributor in New South Wales. We're operating in a particular franchise which is focused around south of Sydney, south coast, western part of Sydney, up until the Blue Mountains in the northwest. And traditionally, we've been a state-owned poles and wire business, but that has changed dramatically over the past 5 years or so, where we effectively have been privatized. Technically and legally, it's a 99-year lease with a consortium of Australian and overseas funds managers. But in practice, it means that we've been able to start our digital transformation journey, and that started almost immediately after that legal change. We've done major programs in the technology space, as in corporate technology, in the operational technology space, and that transition is ongoing because it's all driven by the energy transition. So you will all have heard about changes in the industry. You have seen changes in technology whereby I would guess half of the audience will have solar panels on their roof, maybe a battery here and there, and that all has impact on how we need to manage our distribution network. So those what we call distributed energy resources have an impact on how we can manage the network, and how we manage the network has a strong technology focus. So we're constantly changing, also not just from an electricity management perspective, but also from how we interact with our customers, because customers want portals, how they have access or allow us access to their panels or batteries. We install community batteries, microgrids. So while the traditional poles and wires are out there and it forms a basis, when you see where the transformation takes us, it's everything around there. So it's the rate of change is enormous. But because we are part of a critical infrastructure, we still need to comply with industry regulations, federal legislation, particular security acts, which we'll talk about a bit later. So it's definitely a company and an industry on the move.
That's very true. Very true, Armand. Definitely the rate of change is big. And most organizations in this space obviously has to be part of that journey. I want to make sure the audience know that we've got a Q&A panel on the side as part of the webinar. So please pop in any questions at any point in time, and I'll try and see how I bring it into the conversation. So I know that you started the journey with LeanIX about 2.5 years ago. So Jaco, maybe from you at the start and during that time, what compelled you to implement a tool like LeanIX?
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. First up, that photo of mine looks pretty good. I don't look like that anymore. So our journey at Endeavour Energy in terms of LeanIX started when I joined the organization, and the first thing I wanted to do was to get an understanding of the technology landscape in the organization. As an architecture manager, at that time focusing specifically on applications, I wanted to get an understanding of what we look like, what applications we have running, what technology are enabling these applications, what capabilities, what does our value stream look like. And this information was nowhere to be found, really. It was distributed across the organization. across different organizational business units, and was really hard to find and reference because it's somewhere in a file store, it's someone's brain somewhere, and there was no real sort of defined library or repository for architecture work.
Yes.
So we started to play around a little bit, do some research in the market to see what's available. In my previous roles, I played around with iServer and Mega and some of the other tools, but from my experience with those tools is that they need one person 100% full-time to maintain it, to access it, to provide the information that's necessary. And we were more looking at something that can provide and enable collaboration across the technology organization, a tool and a platform that's easy to use, that's simple to use, where we can very quickly and over a period of time build out the quality of the data and information that we require to make technology strategy decisions. The other part of that was it wasn't that easy for us to find out where our risk areas were. Without going through endless lists of applications and technology and conversations with the support organization to understand what the life cycle of a particular technology or application is, and then compiling that all back into a spreadsheet to figure out what you're going to have to do next, made it really, really hard. And that compelled us to look at an application that can consolidate all of that data, make it easy for us to make these decisions, very quickly understand what is business critical, what is not. Is it end of life, but it's not business critical? Don't worry about it. So start to focus on the right things at the right time in order to achieve the outcomes that you need to achieve.
That's excellent. Jaco, I think those are challenges that most organizations are dealing with, just the vastness of the landscape and the way to understand what that picture looks like to identify risk areas. Adoption in the organization, because obviously LeanIX is unlimited users. Any quick words on the adoption rate, apart from just from the architect perspective?
Yeah, I think the adoption rate within the organization it's quite good at the moment. I think from the onset, the adoption was more amongst the architecture community,
yes.
the designers, the solution architects, the domain architects, the people who actually need to know, manage, and use that information. So the first thing we did, given that it's unlimited users, is we wanted to make it easy for everyone or anyone in the organization to gain quick access to the tools and the information that they require. So the first thing we did was to automate user provisioning via ServiceNow and to enable the platform for single sign-on with a standard viewer role to begin with, and then we would review that role and
from there on
provide relevant access where needed. So we wanted to make it easy, simple, quickly. You get an email, you're in. Now, the other thing that we wanted to make sure of is that we start to consolidate the way that architects work by fully leveraging the core capabilities of the tool. So we gradually started to move away from MS Visio, and all of our diagramming and viewpoint work is basically done in LeanIX now. So most of the architects started to realize the value of the tools and the capability within the drawing tools and the ease of mapping data that's already in the platform and using that in your diagram. So the more complete your data set, the better your quality, the more trustworthy it is, the easier it is to build viewpoints, not just diagrams. Because a diagram is a diagram for those who need to see that. But if you want to build purposeful diagramming, you need to make sure that the data is trustworthy and the data is complete. You have good quality data. You can build basically any kind of viewpoint you like. So architects love that. They love
That's very true.
They love it when their work's made easier. So the adoption rate expanded quite a bit there amongst the architects. Through a series of workshops and roadshows, we also exposed the solution to operational support teams who started to see the value there as well, because they started to learn that they can get a better understanding of the landscape, the technology landscape, and get access to architecture information related to current and new technology implementations. Through the work that we have done within the factories is that we mapped key resource documentation to the actual LeanIX fact sheet, so that when the operational support teams come in and they want to see what the detailed design is like for an application, that resource is linked from SharePoint into LeanIX, and they can quickly access that. And they actually started to use the tool more frequently than they would use the ServiceNow CMDB, because they had more information.
And that's a great outcome.
Yeah.
Yes,
From,
absolutely, Jaco.
Broad-based point of view, we're not as deep as the CMDB, but we are broad.
Yes,
We have a lot more
that's excellent.
width in our data. And then, of course, our project delivery team started to use it as well, and it's more to see what technology solutions are already in place to enable certain capability sets, because you end up, from a project delivery point of view, realizing that we actually have multiple applications enabling a capability, and that the project should aim to actually consolidate and reduce and not add to the heap of applications that we already have. So
yes,
they started to gain some insights in terms of the delivery aspects of projects and the alignment to strategic initiatives, and why architects are making the decisions that they're making. Because we sometimes get asked, why are we doing it this way and not that way?
Why are you doing it that way in
Show with
particular?
evidence, this is why we're doing it. So yeah, we are continuously to push that adoption. I think our biggest challenge from an adoption point of view, really, and it wasn't the focus for us, and we realize now that maybe we should have done it that way, is with senior leaders. Because they're all aware of the tool, they're all aware of the value proposition, they all know that everybody's using it, but they're not using it.
And
So
I think,
still
Jaco, on that space, maybe specifically, is some of the value that from a cyber and a risk perspective, that one do have an angle to try and look at that adoption and that influence, and specifically. Armand, I know that, and you know, both of you know, that cyber has emerged as a critical item on any executive and board's agenda. And obviously Endeavour, as an asset-intensive enterprise and a key player in the energy industry, the SOCI Act has brought a lot of compliance reporting to the fore. How did LeanIX assist you to achieve this and report in the various compliance areas? Armand, if I can ask you.
Yeah, I want to hook into something that Jaco said, and you said that about the executive not really using LeanIX yet, but without them knowing, they are doing this indirectly. Because
yes,
we do answer ad hoc questions, including around some of our security domains with LeanIX. I think what the just to finish off that adoption space, whereby we I think need to transition from people knowing that it's there, wanting the information, firing questions to us, to move to a more self-service.
yes.
And that is an ongoing maturity.
A journey, absolutely, yes.
So now coming back to this compliance question, let me state up front, LeanIX is not a auditing or compliance tool, but being in our industry as a critical infrastructure provider, we have to comply with the SOCI Act. We have an industry specific AS/CSF framework, and what we've seen over the years is that more and more demands are being put on us in terms of implementing controls and also demonstrating how we use the controls. So, and how LeanIX helps us in that is a very practical thing. Is at a generic level, we have a central repository now, and for instance, we use the provider fact sheets, whereby we can identify who is responsible for our critical management systems, or who's responsible for certain technology components that play a role in that security space. So that while it seems maybe on the trivial side, again, that information is now linked, is available in a centralized pod, and we can someone can walk up to our desks, a security manager, and in fact they do that in the ongoing processes of establishing processes around compliance, embedding them, auditing them. They do come up, okay, what's the status of this component? Have we got a contract? So it's a very straightforward entry point in that compliance process. Now our actual critical assets, critical infrastructure assets, and I'm not talking about IT, but
but more the physical ones, yes.
The sensors, the transformers, all that stuff. We don't hold that in LeanIX, but we do hold the systems that manage those assets in there. And what we use is we do risk profiling, we do technical obsolescence, and we've got those in reports, so we can immediately see, hey, are we up to date with this particular system? Have we got a program in place to do an upgrade if required? So again, it's that centralization mapped against a criticality of managed assets, mapped against technical currency, all in the one spot. Another aspect is where we map out, again in the centralized repository, are critical data objects. And because we identify them, we tag them, we can see where in which systems are these data held, how do they traverse, the interface data. These are all largely out of the box reports, dashboards that we use, whereby we tweak what we visualize and how we tag things. But again, we can go from data to systems of record, again, to the providers, to the vendors that need to be aware, if they provide a service, that they're dealing with critical data. And so we have these multiple prongs in they're in a continuous improvement process, as it goes with cybersecurity programs these days. And we are in the middle of that journey, and it's a never-ending process. We have multiple acts, legislation, regulations that we need to comply with. Like a generic one is the PII for customer data. So, and I would say, while LeanIX is not the tool to manage that compliance, it plays an important role for us in helping demonstrate our compliance, in helping demonstrate the allocation of capital programs. Another linkage is, for instance, when it's CIO, what does our cybersecurity program look like? Again, we have got a strategic objective, and LeanIX immediately spells out, okay, these are the projects that are linked to that strategic objective. These are the systems that are going to be touched or impacted. Yes. So it's really that whole traversing the lines of sight with a particular cybersecurity or a particular act as a perspective on that end-to-end enterprise architecture model.
And that's great, Armand. Coming back now, just throw something in here quickly around picking up on Jaco's point about adoption and yours about the influencing from a C-level perspective. Just quickly on what you've done so far from a reporting perspective, compliance perspective, is that well utilized? Is that a way to be able to show them a picture and provide insight in terms of that cyber profile? So it helps on that adoption perspective.
Yeah, that is very much through a lens of risk.
Yes.
So that is one where we use landscape, the landscape reports where we can configure it. We numerous implementations, but for this particular lens, we highlight the risk profile, we highlight business criticality, we highlight the underlying technology components risk, and that is something. And I love to communicate in that way with a one-page picture for a CIO.
Yes, absolutely.
And while again, this is not the compliance report, but it focuses the attention, it triggers the right questions.
Yes.
And it becomes a facilitator. So that is something we use a lot in that space.
Armand, maybe a follow-up on that. I'm happy for either one of you to jump in. If, as the audience are listening to this, and it sounds like you've gone a long way on your journey already, from this particular aspect that we've just spoken about in the last few minutes, where would you suggest to focus first? If someone is going on to this journey, what is the shortest path to success? So focus where? Because there's a lot of areas that one can dive into.
I've got two examples where that for us here work as eye openers. One is where we helped the operations team and also the IT management team by linking our technology components, for instance, with the LeanIX managed global database. So we have yet to discover a piece of technology that is not represented there. And this, just by modeling our technology components out of the box, gave us basically a technical currency map. And with an ease that has never been seen here before, and also with a completeness that hasn't been seen here before, because this was really an eye opener for our IT management team.
And that's the life cycle piece you're talking specifically about, yes, because that becomes available out of the box.
Yep, and typically it would require people, and we're talking about a single product, making phone calls to distributors or vendors, scouring on the internet, reading through many pages of legalized content. Okay, what is the status of our particular version 8.b Oracle XYZ database component? Well, that just takes a lot of time, and now we have that just running. And another one, and because I was talking about eye openers, was in our industry we need to be very aware where things are hosted. So we have to make sure that technology is hosted in Australia, is not accessible from overseas destinations. And our applications architect, for instance, he mapped out a hosting diagram. Just, we know what we host on premises is fine, we're under control. But as many of the audience will have experienced, these days the cloud first option is highly regarded, and in some cases it's very clear where things are hosted from and supported from. Sometimes it's not so clear. So again, single page overview for the CIO. Something
Yes.
he wasn't aware of, how much of our stuff is hosted in the cloud, for instance. That and again, it gives
a very
you
quick overview.
a quick overview, and it gives you the communication channel. What's this? Why are we hosting? Where, you know, it's
Yes, and starts creating the conversation,
yeah.
which is so important.
But
Yes.
at the same time, when you're looking at using that in a compliance space, we can demonstrate. Yep, we know everything. We have a map. We can color code it, and that again makes the whole compliance process a lot smoother.
Most definitely. I've got, just in terms of what you've talked there about your CIO having a look at that information, a question online. Someone struggling with is using out-of-the-box reporting to inform executives. As it tends to be complex, it's hard to tell stories at that level. Is there anything that you can suggest that sort of appealed to the executive level stakeholder to demonstrate the value of the platform cost?
Okay. Well, two things. If it's getting too complex, reduce the number of levels.
Yes, switch off.
and pick company colors. So
Yeah, start simple.
Color pictures, a few blocks, and we're all architects here. That's the space we live in. So that's
but especially with the executives, right?
Yeah.
Less is more for them.
Yeah.
So
No,
don't tell them what
absolutely.
they don't need to know. Only tell them what they need to know, and they can ask.
It's about conveying a message.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Executives don't need to know we're running version A.B.C. They want to know, is there a risk?
Yes.
No?
What
Okay,
is the red
move on.
flag?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a timeline.
Absolutely.
And another example of demonstrating the value, and this happens more often than not, is people walking up to the desk and saying, "Hey, Jaco, hey, Armand, can you tell me blah, blah, blah?" And the answer these days is, yes, of course. How much do you want to know? How deep do you want to go? And then the value is that while they're at the desk looking over your shoulder, you can do it in real time. There's no,
absolutely.
I'll come back next week, I'll have to diagram something up in Visio or something. No, it's here. And it's almost like a agile architecture. You sit with your customer, looking at the screen, a bit more of this, a bit deeper here, and you can provide an answer. And that is, I think those things are very valuable. I can't put a dollar figure on that.
Yes.
But it's,
no, I agree. I think most definitely from a LeanIX perspective, product-wise, there's dashboarding, KPI, and metrics that can be utilized to try and tell the story or reduce the detail that a C-level wants to look at. And also some of the new features that LeanIX is about to release is where there's that in LeanIX presentation mode, which makes it really easy to run through a presentation, but you're actually in LeanIX, and you can very easily just link to more detail if more detail is needed. So a different few ideas for the question that's come online. Jaco, if we maybe one or two things from your perspective, we're focusing on reducing complexity in the EA portfolio in particular. One or two things that you think that has been successful in your journey so far. If you have to call out these two things, what would it be?
Well, it's hard to.
And I know there may be 10.
There's so many of them. Yeah, I think, in terms of our success, it's really about the data. LeanIX is about data. It's not about drawings.
It's a good call out.
You build drawings from data. You can build any drawing you want if the data is there. And you can reflect it in a certain way, depending on the audience and who wants to see what. So for us, it was really important to try and get as much and complete data as we possibly can into the system. So having said that, we started really simple, right? By just getting into the platform what we know, and it was mostly around the application space. And the data came from spreadsheets, very old spreadsheets, containing data about applications and systems that no longer existed. And we didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nobody else knew it. So the way to do that is to, from there you engage via surveys with those who are deemed SMEs, who know the systems, know the platform, support the platforms, and through an easy survey allow them to give you the information you need to know and start to clean up your data, clean up the quality,
Yes.
understanding. There are key metrics that you need to have in your data in order to have a good understanding, just a quick initial understanding of your landscape. And that's really the life cycle stuff. If you have an application, is there a possible successor? What is the timeline that you're looking at before you can start to consider implementing a successor? Was there a predecessor? And then simple things like, is it technically fit? Having the conversations with the SMEs, is it technically fit? Is it functionally fit? So does it fulfill the business function, and is it technically compliant with our standards? And then the sort of the fourth metric there is, how critical is this? How important is it? The fact that it's end of life and there's a life cycle for it doesn't necessarily always mean it's business critical. So it's that focus on the important stuff first, and the only way to do that is through landscaping. So running your landscape reports, you have so many different options there, so many different layers that you can set that up in, that allow you to see things in one go, right? You can run things, change it so it shows business criticality, all the applications that are potentially end of life, all the technology components that are end of life, that could potentially impact a certain important user group, because you map user groups to applications. You map in the capabilities. You map in your business objectives from a business strategy and an organizational technology strategy point of view. We started to do that not too long ago. So you can start to see that the work that you are doing in terms of dealing with a particular business critical applications lifecycle actually impacts the broader vision, broader strategy, broader outcomes of the organization that we're looking to achieve. And by having these landscapes available makes a massive difference to all areas of the organization looking at it, because quick information at a glance without doing really much.
Yes.
They don't know how much work has gone into getting it there, but even that process is now made a lot easier by LeanIX for us to be able to export data in the form of a spreadsheet, populating the spreadsheet, getting it back into the system, and voila, the data is there. You can run your landscape reports. The other thing I just wanted to quickly touch on, especially with my passion, the architecture community, is that the team actually loves the tool, because that's the problem I had in previous organizations. The team hated the tool. They didn't want to use it. It's too complex, too hard. It's visio dependent, blah, blah, blah. In this case, we don't have that. It's easy. It's simple to understand and for the team to use. The drawing capability based on the data, or even if you don't use the data, it's just a concept you want to draw up. It's really quick. All the standard stencils are there for Archimate. We are big on Archimate. We use the Archimate framework combined with TOGAF. And all of that's there in the platform. You don't have to go and download and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
It's all there. You can use it. And it's very quickly become that single repository for all of our architecture work, our diagrams, and the work that guys are doing, and the mapping of the architecture, the actual documents, high-level designs, detailed designs, as-built documents, as they are in the architecture library, are all linked as resources to the relevant spreadsheets. Even the diagrams are linked back to the fact sheets.
Yes.
Spreadsheet fact sheets. So it's so easy for anyone to just go into the fact sheet and you have all the resources, even the diagrams as to what ecosystem does this application belong to, and how important is it to the business, and what other detailed documents do I have available that I can quickly have a look at. Makes a big difference, saves so much time.
And I think your point about the data part there, Jaco, is we all know that the data is the cornerstone, I suppose, from LeanIX, and yet we do find that maybe in some cases not enough importance is placed on getting the data in there and then make it available and getting the team to really use it as their BAU tool. That is absolutely fundamental. So we spoke through some of these good successes. Armand, maybe as a last question before I go to one more from the audience, what would you have done differently? Is there anything there that was challenging, got through it, but if again you could start, you would have done it in a different way?
Well, I would say that the introduction of a new system and associated way of working is always it's a change management process.
Yes. Yeah.
So while I think we did a reasonable, okay job in doing that with the architecture community, there's always we could have done more of the
room for improvement.
Yes, that's always there, but and I think that because the tool itself is so accessible and easy to work with, sometimes people can go a bit rogue in it. It's very easy to create fact sheets for everything. But I think if there's one thing in hindsight, maybe focus more on the quality than the quantity. So
that's a great statement.
That everything that's in there is 100% correct and with a certain level of completeness. Because one of the great things about LeanIX is you can start small. You don't have to load hundreds or thousands of fact sheets in there to be able to do something. So that's probably one thing we didn't do is implement that quality seal governance process initially, and maybe we should have thought about that earlier. But in the end, I tend to look at the outcomes, and if I can summarize Jaco's benefits that he summed up, we're now at the stage where in our architecture governance process, we have a tick. Is your proposal, have you modeled it in LeanIX? If not, you won't get endorsement. And so that's it. So that's in our BAU governance process. But even more concise and more striking, I think, we now have a team of architects that don't use Visio anymore.
That is excellent. So the outcome is excellent.
That one liner tells you something about the architecture community and how far we've come.
No, that's excellent. Absolutely.
Sorry, their governance presentations are actually done directly from LeanIX.
Out of LeanIX. And that's what you want. You can't ask for anything more than that. I've got a question here from the audience. Has Endeavour had success using the TOGAF meta model, or have you delivered a customized framework for the architecture practice? Is it TOGAF or?
TOGAF, yes.
Short answer is yes.
Yes, we've always, it's a little bit of a combination between TOGAF and Archimate. as a best practice approach. But yeah, we've always been following the TOGAF framework loosely.
Yes.
Like any framework, there's a guideline. It's not there to follow word for word. So you need to apply it so that it works with your operating model.
Yes.
And we do architecture. So we have applied TOGAF and Archimate where it made sense to do so.
It's a good answer. Where it makes sense, yes, where it makes sense to do so.
But also, I think LeanIX facilitates that approach, the lines of sight where you have your business architecture layer, your information layer, which is called data in LeanIX, applications, and technology/infrastructure. So, yeah, we apply that TOGAF thinking in LeanIX.
And we also support the change management process through the identification of change within the platform from a risk management point of view, support that ongoing change and monitoring of where we're going with our technology strategy. Because LeanIX is not a do and leave kind of tool. You need to keep it alive.
Yes, and work on it every single day. Yes.
Yes, as you define successes, at some point those successes will become reality. So you need to update the platform to grow with your strategy development, with your changes that you're making to the ecosystem. Else it just becomes another historical tool.
Which is, absolutely where your adoption comes from. Yes, very important. So thank you very much.
But back to the question of TOGAF, it's not like we sat down, are we going to implement TOGAF in LeanIX? It's the other way around. We just apply TOGAF-driven thinking, and by using LeanIX, that's the outcome. So it's the other way around.
Oh, thank you, Armand. And I think one more question I'll try and answer, and then I want to jump into with introducing Josh, our Premium Services Support Manager, after that. The last question here is there a high-level roadmap available to start small and gradually increase usage for more use cases in an enterprise? Samir, happy to chat with you offline, most definitely. From a Kapish perspective, the way that we work in partnership with our clients, and I think Armando Jaco has mentioned that, is start small. And we, looking at a jumpstart, looking at how to kick you off, how to transition you in, and then looking at different use cases, but trying to make sure that it stays thin slices rather than, I think Armando, you said, we're not boiling the ocean from the get-go. Small and thin slices most definitely helps you to gain confidence and start to see insight almost immediately. So I think depending on the problem space that maybe is the most front of mind for a particular organization, we'll work with you to help define a roadmap with small and gradual increases. But thank you for that.
If I can I just quickly add to that? If I may.
Yes. I'm mindful of time because I do need at least 5 minutes or 7 at the end.
Kapish made a big difference for us because that pathway to production was the very thing we struggled with is, where do we start? We got so much information everywhere. How do we start? And that whole start small pathway to production with steps, with us working with Kapish along the way to get it to a sensible, usable, value-adding, minimum viable product was what really helped us getting it over the line.
Thank you for that, Jaco. That is, I think that's absolutely core to an implementation, is a partnership and working with to try and understand how to take steps towards a journey. And sometimes the path you've taken is not always going to work out exactly. We'll try and change and, make some adjustments. But as long as everybody's on that path and going forward, we're doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing by Endeavour, most definitely, as partners. Thank you very much. just staying on this cyber topic in particular that we discussed today, I want to introduce Josh Harding, who's our Premium Services Support Manager, and we want to give a bit of a taste or a teaser for the information security add-on that we have built, and we've integrated a robust controls library and a reporting framework into the LeanIX workspace that really enhance the ability to manage cybersecurity risk and controls. And Josh, I know you've got a few things to say about that. This is about what our next webinar is going to be a lot more detail on. So if you can give a bit of a view on what to expect.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marianne. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and I'll show off some of the reporting that we can produce from implementing the Kapish Information Security add-on. This is around understanding the effectiveness of controls in your organization. In our demo, we're just going to be looking at applications in terms of the application to control relationship, but the implementation can be done at the IT component and the business process level as well. For ease of the demo, we're just looking at applications. So obviously one of the primary reports we would want to look at is a list of our applications and all of the controls for those applications. So this report here is just clustering our applications with all of the different controls. So we can see for CID, for example, we have 3 controls that are implemented fully effectively, 11 that have minor gaps, 5 that have major gaps, and 1 that isn't implemented at all. Like any of the reporting in LeanIX, we can change the clustering so we can look at it on a stacked view instead, so we can just see all of the list of controls for that application. But obviously at the highest level reporting, having it rolled up and having a count of all of the control effectiveness is very powerful to get a view of how effective your controls are across your application portfolio. Another report is sort of reversing the clustering, so we can look at understanding the maturity of our different controls. So we can see here we have our access control, and 2 applications are implemented fully effectively with the access control. For our cryptography control, 4 are implemented fully effectively. And the controls I'm showing here are just some demo controls, but we can align this to, the NIST framework, ISO 27001, Essential 8, ISM, or a completely custom control set as well. It's completely control set agnostic, so that we can align to anything we need to. Leveraging some of the other information we have in LeanIX, we can start to paint a picture to understand our complete risk profile. So for this report here, what we're looking at on the left-hand side is our confidential data objects, and we're looking at our cryptography control effectiveness. So what I can see is I have one application that's using designs data, which is something we consider very critical to us, that actually has very poorly implemented or not implemented at all cryptography controls. If I click on that, I can see that it's CID. And obviously that's an area of risk for us because there's poor cryptography controls on an application that's using sensitive data. When I layer over other types of information as well, so perhaps the obsolescence aggregated risk, which is looking at the life cycle and vendor support of the technology supporting our applications, we can see that this one application, CID, is actually also got some technology obsolescence risk there. And if we expand the view of that and I click on it, I can actually scroll down and see that it's the database that is no longer in vendor support. So this is an application using a database that's out of vendor support, has poorly implemented cryptography controls, and is using confidential data. So that's a massive area of risk for me that I can identify using these reports. Last one I wanted to show quickly off in our teaser was our maturity reporting. So we can also report back to a cybersecurity framework of sorts. So this is the NIST 1.1, for example. So we have our detect, identify, protect, recover, and respond. What we do is we link each of the controls in the list that we're using to a separate area of the NIST cybersecurity framework, and we can do clustered maturity reporting. So for example, I can see in my detect capabilities, Anomalies and events and security continuous monitoring are green because they have a current capability maturity of 3 and a target maturity of 3. So we've met the target there. I can see that a lot of them are yellow because we've almost met them. We're in 1, we're pretty close. And I can see for governance, for example, we're on 1.3 out of 3. So we've not met anywhere near that. So it's gone red. So I can get an understanding of my maturity across various reporting frameworks, such as the NIST cybersecurity framework in this instance as well.
Thank you, Josh. I think that was good. I know that our next webinar is coming up on the 9th of July. And before I hand back to Rory, just Jaco and Armand, thank you very much. Most definitely, you've confirmed the importance of enterprise architecture in a digital transformation space and the impact of real insight into the IT landscape at your fingertips. Thank you for talking to that. I really enjoyed this.
You're welcome.
Our pleasure.
All right, thank you, Marianne, Armand, Jaco, Joshua, everybody and everybody who attended and asked questions and everything like that. As Marianne touched on there, we're going to be doing another webinar featuring Joshua again, who will be leading that one, talking specifically about that sort of InfoSec stuff that we've built out in LeanIX. I think going back to something that Jaco and Armand said about when Marianne had asked about the biggest sources of value that they got from LeanIX, I think there was something along the lines of, you know, once you have this single source of truth, that the reports kind of flow out from that. And I think the team at Kapish, Joshua especially, has done great work of building some additional customized features to just get more kind of power from that data you have and leveraging it in new ways through, you know, extending that meta model and then bringing in kind of InfoSec sort of components. So that should be really interesting. We'll follow up with everybody after this with a meeting recording, the slides you saw here, some meeting notes, and also an invite for that on July 9th. So thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.